Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the Voice of Reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between Ukraine and Russia. So today, before I start, I wanted to have a conversation about the EU, the European Union. There tends to be a lot of discussion, a lot of talk, a lot of verbiage in the mainstream media here in the United States and other places as well. And more importantly, content providers on YouTube perceive that the EU, the European Union, is this bastion of democracy. And I wanted to have a closer look at the key leaders of the European Union, including the unelected president of the EU. I mean, of course, when you think of a president of the European Union, you think that that person has to be elected. Well, it's not true. The president of the EU is appointed. It is not a democracy. There was no majority vote to place the president of the European Union in power. I'll read you a couple of notes here, and it's just about how the selection process of a member of the European Union is established. And again, they're not elections. It is a selection process with behind-the-scenes agreements that take place. One of these agreements is that it is a rotating selection process, meaning they will one term select a person who is a leading political candidate, not necessarily an elected candidate, but a leading political candidate in a large state, a large European nation state, followed by a quote-unquote leading political candidate in a smaller state. And then there's also an agreement, again, a behind-the-scenes agreement, that rotates between left and right. So let's have a look at the key leading officials of the EU. All right, here we go. Let's see. What do we got? Oh, wait a minute. That's not the president of the EU. That's Klaus. He doesn't have anything to say in terms of the selection process of the president of the EU, does he? I don't think that would be possible. What is this? Is he like a Sith Lord? I mean, what is this? What is he dressing? Is it Halloween? You guys celebrate Halloween and All Hallows Eve in Europe? Maybe he's dressed up for Halloween. Maybe he's going as a Sith Lord. All right, he's not the president of the EU. I'm sure he's a nice guy. Very nice guy, right? All right, next. Wait a minute. It's George. George is not the president of the EU, and he probably has nothing whatsoever to do in the selection process of the president of the European Union, of the democratic European Union, in which no one votes for the president. Okay. All right, we're going to get to eventually. There she is. There she is. It's Ursula. Ursula, baby. The president of the European Union. The unelected president of the European Union. The unelected, selected president of the European Union. I don't even think she was elected in Germany for any reason, was she? Wasn't she like the defense minister? Wasn't she the reason that the German armed forces tanked Yeah, well, whatever. So yeah, Ukraine wants to go and be part of the democracy that is the European Union, right? Right. I'm just saying, I don't make the rules. It's not the voice of reason's fault that the president of the EU is not elected but selected, right? Selected by a couple of people, right? Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, back to the war. So essentially, in Bakhmut, we continue to see the Ukrainian army attempting to push the southern and northern flanks back where it has the ability, the Ukrainian army has the ability to evacuate its forces out of this pocket, which existed just to the west now of Bakhmut. The Ukrainians have essentially retreated from Bakhmut west as the Russians consolidate control over the city of Bakhmut. Now, I guess the question is what is next? Will we see an additional offensive operation by Russian forces pressing west towards Kramatorsk, Sloviansk? Will we see an operation in the coming weeks and months towards Seversk, this pocket in this area here? Difficult to say. It looks like that the Kiev leadership has hit the pause button, and at least right now we're not going to see any large-scale offensive operations by the Ukrainian army at this point. And again, ultimately it looks like where the Ukrainians attempted to deploy some of those forces that were going to be used for this offensive operation, again, was designed to get its forces out of the Bakhmut pocket. And again, this is a Ukrainian-supported map, and you can see the areas in blue in which they are stating that these are new areas that the Ukrainians have taken control over. But I again, just because the size and scope of this area in blue, measured in hundreds of meters, again, it's just the normal course of the conflict that is taking place. Additionally, it looks like the Pentagon is admitting that Russian anti-radiation missiles were used against those Patriot missile batteries. Again, there seems to be back and forth on whether it was a Kh-47, but the real answer ultimately is, in all probability, it was a Russian Kh-31 that attacked and damaged that Patriot missile battery in and around Kiev. Now, when they say damaged, what does that mean specifically? Does that mean that it was damaged and then they repaired it? They brought in a new radar and made it start working again? No, it's not the way that works. When they say repair, when they say they repaired a Patriot missile system, and again, there are different vehicles, there are different pieces of equipment that are involved in the operation of a Patriot missile battery. And what in all probability happened is they simply replaced a system that was destroyed by this Russian missile with a system that was held in reserve, brought it back up to operation again. Again, you just can't repair a radar system that has been hit by an anti-radiation missile. You simply repair the system by bringing in a new radar to replace the radar system that was destroyed. That is repairing a quote-unquote Patriot system. And again, it's just not one system. There are a multitude of pieces of equipment that make up the Patriot missile battery, from radars to the actual launchers themselves. And we just don't know at this point because very little information gets released in terms of what is happening. And the Ukrainians are mum about everything. Very little gets out about anything inside of Ukraine in terms of what's going on. So we ultimately don't really know. Now we do get information released from the Pentagon that may indicate what happened. And again, what is being indicated right now is just that apparently a Kh-31, an anti-radiation missile, took the Patriot missile system offline through a military strike, and then it was, again, quote-unquote, repaired, meaning they brought in a system to replace the damaged, destroyed system that was in operation prior. And that's kind of where we sit. So again, not a lot of changes, not a lot of movements in terms of the battlefield. We're now hearing reports that the United States is saying that they will not block the deployment of F-16s being handed over to the Ukrainians. Now, these F-16s can come from a variety of sources, but the question is how will the Ukrainians use those systems? What airfield are the Ukrainians going to use those systems, those F-16s, if in fact they are handed over? What will that look like? And again, we just don't know, and that's why the United States is very hesitant about handing over F-16s, because again, the Russians are going to go after those airfields, they're going to go after those roadways, the infrastructure that is designed to help facilitate the operation of the F-16. That's what the Russians are going to go after, just like they went after the Patriot. Just like they're going after some of these arms depots that, again, we're not hearing. We're only hearing back channel reports of just how devastating some of these Russian missile strikes are, especially the missile strikes that are within 100 kilometers or so of the front line. And they are having an effect, and that's why we're not seeing any sort of Ukrainian counteroffensive right now, because the Russians are destroying these depots, they're destroying these command and control nodes, they're going after units in the field with its long-range artillery, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, aircraft, helicopter gunships. And they're going to continue to do that. And then again, eventually, as I talked about before, I believe that there is going to be a very large Russian offensive operation later in the summer. Probably late July, August timeframe. And again, is that absolute? No, absolutely not. But it's looking like that right now. Believe me. The Russians are not just sitting on this front line and doing nothing and fighting this static war. There is a plan. Just like the Ukrainians had a plan to launch this counteroffensive that the Russians blunted. And now they have to reassess, and they have to figure out a way to rehash this offensive operation, meaning the Ukrainians. Again, the enemy is just not going to sit there and let you do what you want. I mean, that's what we're seeing in this conflict. It is very complicated, and I think right now, especially here in the West, there is this perception that the Russian army is just utterly incompetent. It can't do anything right. Well, it is doing things right. It's also doing some things not right as well. But I think there's too much focus on what the Russians do wrong and aren't good at, and they make that the entirety of the conflict. And you can't do that. You're getting into the realm of vastly underestimating your enemy at that point. And I think the Western media, Western press is doing that right now. And they're doing it for propaganda reasons to make the American people, the European people, believe that the Ukrainians are, quote-unquote, winning this war. And that's pretty far from the truth at this point. Obviously, the conflict did not go according to the initial talking heads estimate that Kiev would be seized in a matter of days. It's not what happened. And again, that was proven to be wrong, just as what's being talked about right now in terms of this just utter incompetent force that is the Russian military. Is there issues in the Russian military? Yes, absolutely. But would I say that the whole force is utterly incompetent and there just is no saving grace? I wouldn't say that either. So that's kind of where we're at for today. We will continue to monitor, report. Thank you for joining us. More to come very, very soon. Have a good day.